Hey, good afternoon, scholars. Welcome to your Tuesday, 7th grade Vista virtual literature class. I can't wait to dive into today's lesson, and I've got a lot of praise from your work yesterday. Not so much on the completion. Our completion rates actually went down yesterday, but the quality of work that was turned in was a huge improvement from the last assignment. If you remember from yesterday's video, there was one list. It was just one column down the middle. It's about doubled today. So I want to welcome, Chris A. and Nevaeh are on the grit list today. The only reason they were on the grit list yesterday is because they had homework passes because of what rock stars they've been with their Lexia, their math, and their literature lessons. But some new names, we got Aldair today. Both the Amir Club. Welcome both of you. Angel was there from yesterday. Ba is a new addition. Caleb stayed. Catherine stayed. Diana stayed. Amani stayed. I think Jacqueline was a new addition. Julian's a new addition. I think Molly was a new addition. And Uriel was a new addition. Nevaeh and Monica stuck around from the grit list yesterday. So I'm really proud of you guys for just the effort that you put into the assignment, and I'm so happy that this list about doubled in size from the day before. I would love to get to the point where it's like 4 columns long. But this is good progress. Good job, guys. Let's look at some of our answers from yesterday. I'm just going to use Diana's today. All of her answers were really informative. So take a second to bring my minimize my window and pull up your, well, not minimize it because you can't see it, but make it smaller and pull up your work. It's really important that you always have your work and your answers to compare as we discuss the writing and also the answers. Our first question was, what is Mercedes' reaction to the need to reduce their load, and what does this show about her? Where I was pushing you to embed evidence, okay? And we're gonna practice that a little bit together today. Diana said Mercedes' reaction to the need to reduce the load was her crying and not wanting to throw her unnecessary materials away. Yeah, she legit throws a fit, right? It said she wanted to keep all the things being thrown away that caused the sled to be heavy. Quote, she clasped, she cried in general. She was so dramatic and immature. London uses a simile when Mercedes was crying for her stuff, went through them like a tornado, showing her exaggeration. Yeah, Mercedes went through 2 modes in this example. First, she threw a fit and she was crying like a baby and just complaining. And then she went all bipolar and she went from crying about everything being thrown away to going to the complete opposite of the spectrum, and she started throwing everything away, even stuff that she would need. I think it said in there something about she said she appealed to everybody and to everything, finally wiping her eyes and proceeding to cast out even articles of apparel which were imperative necessities. In her zeal, when she had finished with her own, she attacked the belongings of her men and went through them like a tornado. So yeah, she's either whining and complaining or she's doing something really counterproductive and possibly dangerous. Because if you're out in the Alaskan wild without the stuff that you need, it's dangerous. The second question: what do Charles, Hal, and Mercedes not account for when they increased their team size to 14 dogs? What does this show about them? Diana says Charles, Hal, and Mercedes were not accounting for how 14 dogs couldn't carry a sled that holds food for 14 dogs when increasing the team size to 14 dogs. A little bit repetitive, but you're right. The new owners of Buck are unorganized, showing that clearly that they, quote, did not know this, which shows they aren't aware of anything. They were not very good with the dogs. It was, quote, a strange, savage environment, meaning the dogs were as well confused and very mistreated. All what Hal and Charles would do is punish the dogs because they thought this is the way that to make dogs listen. Yeah, so they did not account for the fact that if you're going to increase the team size, you have to dramatically increase how much food you carry. They were bragging on how they of all the sleds they saw coming and going, none of them had 14 dogs like us. Where there's a reason for it. Stupid. You can't do it. It's too many dogs. You can't carry that much food. And like Diana said, what does it show? It shows they're unorganized. It shows there's confusion. I thought she said something else, but yeah, it really shows how unorganized these guys are. Amateurs. They have no idea what they're doing. Number 3 was one of the more an answer that tripped some scholars got tripped up on. It's why does Mercedes feed the dogs extra, and what does this show about her? I warned you, don't get tricked by this question. Diana said Mercedes feeds the dogs extra because she sees how the dogs are, quote, worn out, and they would pull, quote, weakly, and how they would get nowhere more than 10 miles. She thought giving the dogs more food would help them all out. And also, Hal didn't accept giving more food to the dogs. But she is not understanding that the dogs don't need food. What they need is rest. Also, the sled is too heavy that it would, quote, sap their strength, making the situation even more difficult. Exactly. This, her giving the dogs extra food, it shows that what she doesn't understand about dogs. It's like these guys don't need more food. They are exhausted. They need rest, right? It shows more than that, though. It shows serious and dangerous ignorance, right? Ignorance is when you are so unaware of something, it's dangerous, right? What's gonna happen? They're in the middle of nowhere. They already have too many dogs, as is, and not enough food for them. They made this little plan to say, well, we'll be fine on food as long as we cover this much ground each day. They're not covering half as much as they planned. So what's going to happen? They're already in danger of running out of food, as is. What's going to happen when Mercedes is feeding them extra at the beginning of the trip? Yeah, she is dramatically increasing their chances of starvation, right? So I didn't want you to get tricked because I didn't want you to say, oh, she's nicer than Hal and she's showing them mercy. It shows that she's nice. This is the law of Club and Fang, guys. Being nice doesn't mean anything out here. It's dangerous sometimes to be nice out here. And so Mercedes she thinks that she's helping the dogs, but she's actually hurting the dogs because by wasting all this food now, she's almost guaranteeing that they're going to starve later on, right? So this really shows how truly ignorant Mercedes is, and how dangerous that is, and how much suffering it's going to cause later, which it does. Because when we get to number 4, what happened to Dub and the outside dogs? She said Dub dies along with the outside dogs. Dub had a problem with his wrench shoulder blade that went from bad to worse. He wasn't able to get the rest for it to be well treated. People said that the outside dogs were starved to death on the rations, so London was explaining that the outside dogs could do no less than die, meaning that they died and it was expected for it. Let me just give some clarity on this one. Dubs, remember when they ran out of food, they met this woman and traded her for horse meat, for frozen horse meat. That horse meat is no good. It was taken off the dead body of a starved to death horse, so it's doing nothing for the dog's starvation problems. Dubs, because of his rent shoulder blade and the starvation, he collapses. But because they had traded Charles's revolver for the horse meat, they don't have a gun to shoot him and put him out of his misery, so he does it with an axe, right? So Dubs collapse and can't go on, so they kill him. The outside dogs in the following days, they die. They die of exhaustion and they die of starvation because, like it said, These outside dogs have bigger appetites. Their bodies can't do as much with the food that the huskies can. So they starve and they die. So we've got dogs in this team just dropping like flies, and the ones who are alive are basically walking skeletons with no strength, right? So we're going to pick up into today's reading with this as the situation. Things are going to get very, very bad for the team today. So let's preview our first question. How has the trail and its challenges affected Charles, Hal, and Mercedes? All right, we're picking up on page 52 right here by the time. Again, our focus question is, how has this affected the people, Charles, Hal, and Mercedes? By this time, all of the amenities and gentlenesses of the Southland had fallen away from the three people. Shorn of its glamour and romance, Arctic travel became to them a reality too harsh for their manhood and womanhood. Mercedes ceased weeping over the dogs, being too occupied with weeping over herself and quarreling with her husband and father. To quarrel, that means to argue. To quarrel was the one thing that they were never too weary to do. Their irritability arose out of this misery, increased with it, doubled upon it, outdistanced it. The wonderful patience of the trail which comes to men who toil hard and suffer sore and remain sweet of speech and kindly did not come to these two women, to these two men and the woman. They had no inkling of such patience. They were stiff and in pain. Their muscles ached, their bones ached, their very hearts ached, and because of this, they became sharp of speech, and hard words were the first on their lips in the morning and last at night. Charles and Hal wrangled whenever Mercedes gave them a chance. It was the cherished belief of each that he did more than his share of work, and neither forbore to speak his belief at every opportunity, meaning they each think that they're doing more than their fair share of work and the other's not working hard enough, and they talk about it all the time. Sometimes Mercedes sided with her husband, sometimes with her brother. The result was a beautiful and unending family quarrel. Starting from a dispute as to which should chop a few sticks for the fire, a dispute which concerned only Charles and Hal, meaning Mercedes would have never volunteered to chop wood. Presently would be lugged in with the rest of the family, fathers, mothers, uncles, cousins, people thousands of miles away, and some of them dead. That Hal's views on art or sort of society plays his mother's brother wrote should have anything to do with the chopping of a few sticks of firewood passes comprehension. Nevertheless, the quarrel was as likely to tend in that direction as in the other direction of Charles's political prejudices. Guys, that was a dense section. All it's saying is that whenever's come times to work, like they're going to chop about who's going to chop some firewood, they turn it into an argument over all this other stuff involving people that aren't there, and just random stuff gets brought into this argument. You know, if you've ever had an argument with somebody where they bring up stuff that's like, wait, what? Why are you bringing that up? You know, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. That's what happens every single time these guys argue about work. It just turns into an argument about everything else. And that Charles's sister's tale-bearing tongue should be relevant to the building of a Yukon fire was apparent only to Mercedes, who disburdened herself of copious opinions on that topic, and incidentally upon a few other traits unpleasantly peculiar to her husband's family. So she starts knocking her husband's family, whenever she gets the chance. In the meantime, the fire remained unbuilt, the camp half pitched, and the dogs unfed. We can pause there. What is happening to these people? How has the trail and the challenges affected Hal, Charles, and Mercedes? I'm going to start to walk you through this answer because I want to model how to efficiently and quickly embed evidence, because it's still it's a trait that some writers are picking up on, and some are still kind of having a hard time with it. So I want to show you how to do it. Really, guys, it's just a two-step process. The first step is you say what you want to say. How would you answer this question? Don't worry about embedding evidence at all at first. How would you answer this question? All right. So, how I would say the trail and its challenges affected Hal, Charles, and Mercedes, I would say it's made them become extremely bitter, okay, and inefficient. The trail and its challenges have I don't know if you can hear them playing in the backyard, but I moved to this different room so that Hazel would come into my videos less often. All right, the trail and the challenges have driven Hal, Charles, and Mercedes to become even more bitter towards one another and inefficient. So I want to point out two things. I want to argue how nasty they're being towards each other, and I also want to show how it's causing them. We already know that they don't know what they're doing. This bitterness has made it even worse. Hal and Charles each think the other doesn't do his fair share of work. They bring this up all throughout the day. While they're spending most of their time arguing, necessary work is going undone. That's what I would say. Without embedding any evidence, this is how I would answer that question. So now I've gotten out there, I said what I want to say. Now I just go back into the book, and where can I pull a couple words here and there that fit into what I wrote, and I'll just replace it. So the first thing I say is that they become bitter, and I say that each thinks the other doesn't do his fair share of work. They bring this up all throughout the day. Where can I find a quote that speaks to that, or just a couple words that speak to that? It was the cherished belief of each that he did more than his fair share of work. I like that one. Where can I fit it into mine? I said, each thinks the other doesn't do his fair share of work. I could just steal the cherished belief of each part, because that shows you how strongly both of them feel it. Like, it means a lot to them that they think, each of them thinks they're so right. It's a cherished belief. So I'm just going to fit that right into mine. Hal and Charles each have a, quote, cherished belief of each there. My sentence now says, Hal and Charles each have, quote, a cherished belief of each, and now I jump back into my own words, that the other doesn't do his fair share of work. Okay? That's all we got to do to embed. So now I'm going to say I go on to bring up how their arguing causes work not to get done. I said while they're spending most of their time arguing, necessary work is going undone. I can find some words to steal and to borrow and put them into my text right there. I like this one right here. The fire remained unbuilt, the camp half pitched, and the dogs unfed. While they're spending most of their time arguing, the fire remained unbuilt, the camp half pitched, and the dogs unfed. And then I can just necessary work is going, just throw in my sentence after it. Okay, so you're gonna need to change your sentences a little bit, but just very minor changes to make it flow. So that's what you do. Step one, write out your full response, what you want to say. Step two, go back in and find some keywords to copy and paste them into your own words and to your own sentences, and then just make the couple minor adjustments you need to make it flow. All right. So as you keep reading, man, I kind of just answered that question. I'm going to delete the second question. That's my gift to you. We can combine one and two. We're kind of hitting the same thing. Okay, as you keep reading, I want you to pay attention to how the dogs are being affected by Mercedes. Your ASAC question is, why did he write this character? Like, why did he include her? What is he trying to teach us? What is he trying to show us? You know, is he teaching us a life lesson? Is he just teaching us about the ways of the wild and what it's like when someone like Mercedes tries to go there? What are you gonna examine the effect that someone like Mercedes can have on the people who are around her? But why? Why did London include her as a character in this story? All right, what's the point? What's he trying to show? Okay, authors are always trying to teach us something about from their perspective or about life, and I want to know why did he include Mercedes in this book? What's he trying to show us or teach us? All right, that's going to be an ASAC response. So for number two, practice embedding evidence more, and then for number three, that's going to be an ASAC response. All right. Can't wait to see your guys' work. I'm going to delete this so it's clear when you open up the assignment. And let's add even more names to the grit list tomorrow. Scholars and team captains. Just if any scholars that aren't doing their work, if you've got friends that you know aren't getting their assignments done, one thing that might motivate them is we're going to have our own campus next year. That means our own gym. That means our own soccer fields. That means our own, playing volleyball. There's going to be a lot more activities and sports next year. And if you have a friend who plans on being on the volleyball team or basketball team or soccer team, and they're not getting their work in, you might want to give them a text reminder like, hey, you're not going to get to go to any of these practices unless you've made up your work that you didn't do on Vista Virtual. So if you know someone that nudge is going to be helpful to, go ahead and give them that nudge. That clubs and sports, they're not going to be an option for students until they make up the important assignments that they didn't do during this time. Right. So can't wait to see you guys' thinking tomorrow, and I will see you then.